Welcome to Coaches on a Mission.
Thank you. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I'm excited too. So I shared in the intro a little bit, but I am such a fan because I know you as this savvy, like hiring angel, right? Who's
Aw.
able, like you're so discerning and wise and direct. You have like all of these skills that I truly admire. And I'm really happy that our guests are going to get to know you a little bit today. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you for those kind words. Yes. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So we are going to talk about hiring today. And that's how I know you. But you also have this other side of the work that you do, which is related to hiring. But just to give our listeners a little bit of background, Cindy and I, as we record this, are working toward adding a new member to our team. And you had a lot of feedback for me around what I needed to put forward in order, like just my online blueprint, right? What I needed to put forward in order to attract the kind of team member that we were looking for. And through those conversations, you shared with me your why behind the work that you do. And I thought it would be really fun to begin our conversation there, if you'd just be willing to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share that. And I think maybe the way that I can package that for this conversation is just talk a little bit about my background professionally and kind of how I grew up, professionally as well.
Great.
Which is that my background is in HR. That's what I went to school for and landed my first gig in HR 100 years ago, many years ago, and worked my way up, the corporate ladder, as they say. Worked for big companies along the way, had big jobs, big responsibilities, big teams. And I ended up probably towards maybe I would say mid level of my career. I got to the point where I was heading up talent acquisition, a fancy word for recruiting, in a technology, a tech company in headquartered here in Toronto, but we were hiring all across the U.S. and all across Canada. And so my team was responsible for bringing in all of the hires across the entire organization, all levels, regardless of location. And that was my responsibility, is to make sure that whole process worked across, 50 plus offices or whatever the number was at the time. And so, yeah, that's my, my career path. And that's how I got as well versed, not just on the recruiting side of things, but just on HR and honing, those skills over the course of my career. And so, I got to a point where I was ready to leave corporate and take all of the things that I've done there to do it for myself. And, one of the experiences that I had while I was in that, that corporate stretch for 15 years or whatever it was that I think probably in part because I had gotten to a pretty senior level, and because of the role that I had and that impacted the entire organization, I interacted with executives all the time. That was my, client group, as we call it. Yeah. And there were, I was always in executive leadership team meetings and, et cetera, et cetera. And majority, if not all of the time, I was either the only woman in the room, I was either the only Black woman in the room, the only Black person in the room. And that was my experience. And it was very normal, not that it's right, but it was just the way that it was.
Yeah.
And I would often say to myself, like, why is that? Why am I the only one? Like, I have a wide circle of friends and colleagues, and I know I'm not the only one that looks like me, who has professional experience and who's smart and who's, has great things to offer and contribute and make an impact. So why am I the only one that's in the room? And so that was part of what informed my experience along the way. And as I was in those, those corporate jobs, like I would do my best and do my part within, the confines of my role to be able to create opportunities to give feedback, to all candidates, but specifically to the ones that maybe didn't fit the mold or shouldn't be there, so to speak.
Right.
And so that's what I started to do. I was very intentional about helping to create those opportunities, or if they weren't the right fit, but then to be able to coach them and give them feedback and say, hey, this is what the organization is looking for. This is how you position yourself. This is how you articulate how you make an impact, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's became part of just my own personal, work and my own personal mission in those roles. And so fast forward to today, um, part of my work now is on the hiring side and helping fabulous business owners like yourself, Dallas, to add talent to their teams. So I have that side of it, but I also do work on the candidate side,
Yeah.
and being able to be a bridge between the two and helping the candidates learn how to, particularly women, learn how to position themselves, learn how to articulate their value, how to talk about the impact that they may, and connect it to the business results.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of work. I call it professional branding, like learning how to professionally brand themselves. And I think the biggest part of all of that for me is they have to learn how to speak it.
Yeah.
Right? They have to be able to articulate that in a way that influences the interview or the conversation or the person that they're speaking to. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do a lot of work with clients around that part. And then on the hiring side, which is, speaks to the work that you and I do together, is really about helping hiring managers or leaders like yourself to learn how to create a space during the hiring process that welcomes in diverse candidates, and to ask the questions. I'm not afraid to ask the tough questions, and to be the one to raise the issue of, how are you creating an environment inside of your corporation that is inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is really cool about working with companies like yours, is that you are growing and will continue to grow, and you're creating opportunities for people that may not exist in, say, a large, pick a company name, a large scale organization, but can add a lot of value to someone's career. And so I love being able to see things from both the candidate side and from the hiring side of things, and bridge my experience together with that, and come up with something where everybody wins. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I've experienced that Cindy Harvey magic, and I think that your past experience, but also serving both sides of that hiring process, it just
Mm,
makes you so skilled and
mm,
insightful in the work.
thank you.
So I want to jump right to something you alluded to, which is how can we create equitable opportunities in hiring? We'll get
Mm,
more into some nuts and bolts for our listeners, but I think this is important and it's related to what you just shared and related to your why. And I'll start with a story and then I want some tips from you. But
sure.
when we were beginning to define this new role, and you helped me get really clear on like how do we know we're doing well in this hiring process, and I shared that I want the candidate pool to reflect the in particular the racial diversity inside of my community.
Mhm.
And so go and do that, Cindy, right? And then you came right back and you said, okay, this is great,
Yeah.
but you have to show diverse candidates that this is a job worth applying to. So there
Mm,
was a lot of work you asked me to do to bring the message that exists internally and in my closed community, bring it to the forefront so a savvy applicant in doing their due diligence will see that what I say on the application actually matches how we operate. And there was a gap there. So that, and I was so grateful for that. And I especially loved your directness around it, and also like your full understanding and compassion around it. So,
mm,
can you talk a little bit more about how we can make hiring more equitable for everyone?
mhm, yeah, I love that question. I think that the first thing that comes to my mind is to decide.
Mm,
Decide that it matters, right? And decide that, from a truly genuine place. If it's not your thing, or it's not something that feels important or priority for you right now, then that's okay too, But I would say just be real and be honest about the fact that this is something that you as the leader you care about, and that not just you as the leader, but that you as a reflection of your organization, that it matters to the company as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's step one, is just really doing an important self-check. Like, am I saying this because it's all over TV, or am I saying this because my other business friend is doing it, or do I really genuinely believe that?
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I would start, is have an honest conversation with yourself, and if it is in fact something that's true for you, then to make that decision that this is how I'm going to not just manage this hiring process, but also run my organization. I think there's that important piece. I think if you get through that, I think the other thing, which I know really aligns to the work that you do as well, Dallas, is to lead with your values. First of all, know what your values are, as an organization. Like, that's step one. Like, get clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to me, one of the ways to really pull in a diverse group of candidates is to connect with people, maybe from a values-based place is the way to
Yeah.
say that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a value, if someone has a value, or organization has a value of transparency, let's say, right? And if I'm a candidate that's scrolling through and is looking at your posting, and that's something that I connect to as well, like, I will automatically self-select in.
Yeah.
Right. So if you
Right.
if you lead, and kind of part two of that is knowing what your values are, and leading the hiring process from that place. But then the other part of that too is just being public about it, right? Which I think is part of what you and I, work through, is
Mm-hmm.
great. You have it, someone has it in their head, or it's, maybe inside of your team meetings, that's something that you talk about, but a candidate doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't know that. And for me personally, if I'm a I always put myself in the candidate's shoes. If I'm a candidate and I come across your posting, and in the posting it says we welcome people from different backgrounds, or whatever the wording is, I'm going to go check that out. And I'm going to look you up on social. I'm going to look up your website. I'm going to Google you, or whatever tools I decide to use. I might ask people that I know, whatever the case may be. And if there's a mismatch between what you're saying on that posting or throughout that hiring process, and what I see, your public voice is portraying, what that does is it causes a gap. It creates a gap, and it actually creates mistrust
Mm-hmm.
between your public facing image and what you're saying. What you say and what you do don't line up.
Yeah.
And not only is that discouraging, not just for diverse candidates, but for all candidates, it also damages your brand. I believe it really does damage your brand, because that mistrust thing comes into play, and you don't know who knows who. You don't know, who's looking at your posting, and who they're connected to, or what, where they shop, or where they're going to spend their money, just from a pure business perspective. So to me, that just, it really matters. It really, really matters. And so that's the second thing I would say,
Mm-hmm.
is be public about what you really, really believe. And I think the third thing I'd add as well is, sometimes you have to go outside of what's comfortable for you, and maybe tap people on the shoulder and initiate the conversation, as opposed to maybe using traditional routes to put your posting out there, or to advertise your job. Maybe you got to go to some niche places, or maybe you have to work with a consultant who maybe has an entryway to get into other communities, or whatever the case may be. But if it's something that really matters to you, then you might need to do a little bit of, I wouldn't even call it extra work, different work, maybe some,
Yes.
a little bit of different work, to be able to tap into those places where those candidates hang out.
Yes.
So those are some thoughts I would share.
Yeah. I remember once Trudy LeBron saying to me that efficiency is the enemy of equity, or maybe it was
Mm,
urgency, is what she used,
mm,
in particular when it comes to hiring.
makes sense.
So, a lot of our listeners are newer in business, and a lot of them have not even worked with a virtual assistant yet. So, I can almost feel some of them moving on to the next episode because they feel like this conversation should be saved for when they're further along in their business.
Mm,
But what would you say? How does what you just shared apply to the coach who is looking for a VA for 10 hours a month?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, to me, it's the same
Yes.
conversation. To me, it really there isn't really much difference if someone is, regardless of the role, I'd say, and regardless of whether it's a contractor or an employee. It's a 40-hour thing or it's a 10-hour thing. To me, the common denominator is what kind of environment are you wanting to create inside of your organization, regardless of who's working there or in what capacity.
Hmm.
Right. And that to me can also apply to partnerships that you have or whatever you're doing. Like it's more about the heart and soul and the essence of your company, and taking the steps to create that, get clear on that, and create that now.
Yeah.
Right. And even if you have no one working for you, if you have no one
Hmm.
working for you, right, how you show up in the marketplace affects who's going to buy your service or who's not going to buy your service.
Right.
Right, and who is going to follow you on social or who's not going to follow you on social. So
Mhm.
to me, there's a common thread that exists regardless of where you are in your team or hiring journey, that will serve you, regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my intentions for this year
Hmm.
is to ensure that I bring the same intentionality and love and focus to community building in my
Mm,
team that we bring to our community.
mm-hmm.
And there was a time where I didn't, it's kind of embarrassing to say, to be honest, but I didn't think of it in that way. There was like the work that we do, and we are the workers in service to our community,
Hmm.
but that there's also a disconnect there. So that's been a big focus, is
Mm,
really having the through line.
love it.
Okay. So I'm glad you're here because I've been in business 20 years and
Yeah.
this is not a joke. I have hired someone before because I liked her shoes. So like if this was just an episode on hiring mistakes with no solutions, I could take the mic, but thank God you're here.
Okay, okay.
So can we talk about some of the key or common hiring mistakes you see business owners make? And also solutions or ways to avoid those mistakes.
Sure, sure. Well, one would be don't hire them just because you love their shoes. Like that's a
Step
bonus.
one.
I think. Yeah, let's start there. That's a great extra, but it's probably not the place to start. To me, here's one that maybe is a bit, I don't know, unconventional, maybe, or maybe people don't necessarily think about it.
Yeah.
But I think one of the mistakes that I do see, oftentimes because I get sometimes brought in after the bad hire is made, and I get brought in to rehire and to kind of fix the situation.
Right.
And one of the challenges that I see is that the someone gets brought in and the role then gets designed around that person and what that person can do. And why that's a mistake is because, well, before I say that, let me say this. Really, the way to think about it is you want to design your role around what I call functional areas of your business. Start from the functional area. So, if folks don't know, a functional area is sales is a function, marketing is a function,
Mhm.
finance is a function, operations is a function, HR, etc. So those big, the way I think about it is if you think of a corporation,
Yeah.
you've got the CEO and then her leadership team. There's often a CMO, a chief marketing officer. There's a SVP of sales. There's a chief HR officer. There's a CFO, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
That those people represent functional areas.
Is another way to think of that, would the word departments
Sure.
also? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. It's the same concept for
Mhm.
sure. And so, what you want to do when you're thinking about the role, and to me, it doesn't matter how big or small your company is, you want to think about it in terms of that department area or that functional area, and you design the role around that, as
Mhm.
opposed to hiring someone who can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. Because what happens is that eventually people grow, people leave, and then you've got this kind of mishmash of a role that it's really hard to hire into because it was based on that other person who's no longer here. And I think it puts your business at risk, and it creates some, dysfunction in your team as well. So I think that's really a big one, and how you think about it. And I think sometimes, especially in small teams, it's easy to get connected to the person,
Yep.
right? Because there it's a small team, you're close knit, you see them every day, but you've really got to kind of step back as that leader. You got to step back and think about an org chart.
Yeah,
Think about it in terms of an org chart and design the rules that way. So does that feel clear?
it does. Here's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Even though on its face it might, I'm using air quotes for our listeners, it might work to have an awesome person on your team and build a job for them based on their skills. When that person grows or leaves, it's really hard to fill that role because it's
Mhm.
based on the person rather than the function.
Yeah, you got it. You got it
Yeah.
100%. And I
Mhm.
think what I would suggest instead, back even to the contractor question that we talked
Yeah.
about a moment ago, to me, it's better to have, a marketing person who does like 10 hours a month or a week or whatever it is. And you also have maybe an operations person or a salesperson who maybe the jobs are smaller in terms of time, but they are more focused on those departmental areas. And you get people who have some level of expertise
Yeah.
in that area as well, and they can elevate the work that they're doing. So that's how I would think about it.
Got it. So if I am making my first hire, instead of just hiring a VA service, right, that can maybe do all the things, if I'm really thinking about the growth of my business, I may hire 3 different virtual assistants so that they're
Yes.
experts in their own arenas. Okay, that makes a lot of
Yes.
sense to me.
Yes, you got
It
it.
also feels inconvenient, doesn't it?
It may, yeah, it may feel that way
Mhm.
for sure, and
Mhm.
having to manage different things, and different people. But
Mhm.
to me, that's part of your growth as a leader as well, is
Completely.
to be able to step into that role and manage your team as well.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if we're gonna get into this or not, but a mistake I've made, and I see a lot of my Hive members make, is they wait to hire until the building is on fire,
Yeah.
right? And then they just kinda grab whoever is nearest to come and help.
Yeah.
And so when I said it's inconvenient, that's what I had in mind,
Okay,
right?
got
Like,
you.
if you're
Yes.
hiring in the state of an emergency, the
Mhm.
idea of slowing down and thinking about functions and hiring
Mhm.
3 people instead of 1 when you can hardly keep up with your inbox
Mhm.
feels like a nightmare, but I've made that mistake, and
Mhm.
you're right.
Mhm.
You're right, I'm wrong. Okay, next mistake.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
would actually build on that one that
Mm,
you just mentioned as well, Dallas, is, kind of waiting too long. You
yeah,
know, I think there is something, I'm guilty of this too. Like you want to be ready. I've got everything organized, I've got everything set up. I know exactly how this is going to play out. But I don't know if we ever really get to that point, to be honest. So I think being able to I don't know, have a bit of courage maybe, or be brave and, step out and make that first hire. Against, maybe start small,
yeah,
right? Maybe start small and kind of get those wheels turning, get that momentum building with one person, but do it before you really need to do it, if that
mhm,
makes sense.
mhm,
Yeah. So
mhm.
that's I think another mistake that I see, is that we just wait too long, and then, Mach 3 hair on fire running through the running through the hallways, and you can't make, I don't think, a really clear, sound decision about what you need, and who's the right person to fill that role for you.
Yeah. It's also completely unfair to the person you're hiring.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a okay. So something else I think related to this is, especially when we're making our first hire, but I'm even feeling it a little bit with this hire.
Mhm.
Can the question of can I afford them? Only
Right.
looking at a hire as an additional expense to the business,
Mhm.
but they my team is my biggest asset.
Mhm.
We had actually this week 2, I'll call them like accidental, 2
Okay.
accidental applications into the Hive where I was like,
Okay.
"Who is this? Like, how did this happen?" And that's
Yeah.
supposed to be what's happening, right, Cindy?
Right, right.
But both of them happened, as a result of the actions that our new hire is going to take in the business.
Mm.
And we don't have anyone right now who's intentionally doing them. That's why I called them accidental. And I had this
Mhm.
moment of, Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what's possible when we have
Mm.
someone sitting in the chair
Yes.
taking these actions all the time, and it got really exciting. So
Mm.
suddenly any hesitation I had around, "Ooh, can I afford to make this higher?"
Yeah.
evaporates and
Mm.
shifts immediately into, "We gotta hurry up," because of
Mm.
the opportunities being lost without
Yes.
having someone sitting in that chair.
I love that. I love that. I think that that opportunity lost is an
Mm,
important, mindset shift around it. And I get it. When you're in it, it can feel scary. But like I said, just to maybe start really small and let it build from there. But you're definitely losing out on things as well. So maybe think about it from that angle. What am I gaining, and
yeah,
how will that benefit me? Having a longer term view, I think, makes a big difference.
yeah, yeah. So you've mentioned starting small a couple of times.
Mhm,
If I'm about to hire my first virtual assistant, like
mhm,
where should I look to determine which function to hire for?
mm, hmm. That's a great question. I think what I would say is to think two things come to my mind. So one is,
Mhm,
where are you, if it's just you right now, where are you the bottleneck?
mhm.
Right? Where is the pressure point? Right? And where are you getting in the way of your business progressing? And I would just start to write those things down.
Yeah,
Right, so you can create some awareness around it for yourself. Like, I think that's one checkpoint to look at. I think the other thing I would suggest is to ask yourself, what does the business need right now?
mhm.
What does the business need right now? And again, do a self check on that and see, thinking about it in terms of your goals for, say, the next 12 months or the next 6 months or whatever time frame feels good. If you have a goal around, I know you're doing a thing on list building right now, right? So if
Right.
you have a goal around doubling your list, let's say, so what exactly is involved with doing that?
Mhm.
Right? What's the chunks of work that's involved with actually bringing that goal to fruition? And that could turn into a marketing role, perhaps, or whatever that looks like for you, depending on what's going on in your business. But what is the business need right now, and then
Yes.
pull out the role from there. Those are kind of two angles I would
Yeah.
suggest.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Something else that's coming to mind, I'm just thinking about our Hive members,
Hmm.
identifying what the business needs, and then, I don't know if this is the perfect language, Cindy, but
Yeah.
am I the person to step into this role and get out of my inbox?
Mm.
Or am I the person to stay in my inbox? There are like 4 Hive members I'm thinking about right now as I say this, and you know who you are
Say
if
their
you're
names,
listening,
Dallas. Say their names. Call them out.
right? I like to think about maybe it's like a hiring triangle, right? Where there's
Hmm.
the widest part is so much of that admin work
Hmm.
that if you are a values-driven coach, you can often struggle with visit the tension around being visible consistently. And it
Mm.
might be tempting to go and hire a marketing person so that I don't
Mm.
have to be visible, but and then I'm just hiding in my inbox. So
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm being clear, but I'd love to hear your thoughts around that
Yeah.
observation.
Oh, I love that. I think,
Mm.
are you talking to me right now, Dallas? You calling me out? But no, that's a brilliant point. I really love that. And to me, I would also link that to, what does the business need,
Yes,
right?
right?
Does the business need, if it's growth, and I think majority of companies have a growth goal of some kind. So let's just
Mhm.
assume that, right? Then what role do I as the leader need to play to create that? Right.
Mhm.
That, I think there's that from the business angle, but there's also from a personal growth and development angle as well.
Right.
Right. Where do I need to shine more? Where do I need to step up more? Where do I need to show up more for my business in order for all of this, these dreams and ideas that I have to actually happen? I,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I think it's really easy to hide, to use your wording there, and for it to feel I don't know, for it to feel safe, maybe, probably, right? For it to feel safe,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really serve, I don't think.
Right. Yeah. I just think about myself. We made a hire a year ago, Julie, shout out to
Hmm.
Julie, who came in and really does, she's our project lead. So she keeps the trains running on time. And I could have done that. Let's be honest, I couldn't have done that. I could have told myself that
Right.
I could do that and hired someone to move into this like head of marketing position. But I
Mm,
saw for myself that I needed to
mm,
step more fully into the role, of course, of coach, but also of like the talent and
yeah.
the head of marketing, because that's
Hmm.
where my skills were, but that's also where I needed to
Hmm.
stretch my comfort zone.
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
hired Julie, and now I get to film Instagram reels every day. So,
Fun. And they're so good. Yeah.
all right. Are there any other mistakes that come to mind, Cindy, that we should impart on our listeners?
Yeah, the other thought that comes to my mind is I think sometimes we're hesitant or shy to talk about money as well.
Mm,
And I think it's normal, right? It's normal. When you're hiring someone, you're going to pay them, they expect to get paid, they're delivering a service. So money is just part of the transaction or part of the interaction. And I get that it can feel uncomfortable or awkward, but you got to talk about it and ask the question, or be upfront in your posting or advertising to say this is what I'm paying for the job. And I think what that does too is it helps to have the right person step forward, draw in the right person, because there's clarity around that.
yeah,
So I would say, like, just don't be clear on what you can, the ability to pay, and say it. Be
yeah,
upfront about it, and it's not going to work for everybody, and that's fine, right? But
yeah,
don't shy away from that money conversation as well.
yeah. You're right, because it has to happen before the person gets hired. It has to happen anyhow, and
Hmm.
you can save a lot of unnecessary work, right,
Hmm.
by being upfront about that in the
Yeah.
beginning.
And
Mhm.
it builds that trust factor that we were talking about too. Like, there's
Yeah,
no secrets, nothing to hide. It is what it is. So
yeah,
let's talk about it.
yeah, yeah. That's a great tip for selling, also,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All right, this is so juicy. I I have two more questions.
Sure. Yeah.
I wanna first get your insight on how long it actually takes to hire someone,
Mm.
and then just to wrap the conversation up, what would be some great if you were to give our listeners an assignment of some
Mm.
sort,
Hmm.
or first steps, because a lot of them are in a position where they need to either expand, like they need to make their next hire, even if it's
Hmm.
another VA or their first. But
Hmm.
first, let's talk about honestly how long it takes to hire.
Yeah, I think the answer everybody wants to hear is it takes like a week, and, you've got your new person, and you could do that. You could have a really quick turnaround process.
Mhm.
I would just speak to it from the way that I manage searches, and the process that I would take a client through is that from start to finish, I would say give yourself. Assuming the process runs completely smoothly, I would say at least 60 days, which is a 2-month window. If you can give yourself 90, I think that gives you a bit of flex, which I think is a good thing. But that's everything from, okay, deciding that I need to hire, getting really clear on the definition of that role, writing an engaging and compelling posting, doing that values work that we talked about, posting the job, getting applications, screening. Like, there's a whole process to get from yes, I want to hire, to day one in the job.
Mhm.
And I think just give yourself the grace of having space to walk through that in a way that doesn't feel rushed, it doesn't feel pressured, and you end up getting an awesome person to join your team because you've taken the time. So I would say at minimum 60. If you could do 90, that would be even better.
Yeah. 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 The best hires that I've been able to make were the longest hires.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. So if you could get our listeners started down this path or thinking in the right direction around their next hire, what assignment would you give them?
Mm. Yeah, I have two things pop to my mind, and I've mentioned them
Mhm.
already in our conversation, so I'll just highlight them here. So the first one I would say is to get clear on which type of role you need to hire. So that department or functional area that we talked about, and to make that list of where are there bottlenecks in my business? Where am I the bottleneck, or where are things not happening? How are we holding ourselves back right now? And
Mhm.
just make a list of those things so you can start to get an idea and actually see it, see where you have that opportunity to create more fluidity maybe in your business and to get yourself further ahead towards your goals. So I
Mhm.
would start with one of those kind of activities. The other thing I would say is that whole values piece. Like,
Yeah.
I think that that's so important, regardless, again, whether it's you're hiring or you're looking for a partnership or you're doing neither of the two. I think, really being clear on what your company stands for. And I think about it in terms of the culture of the business, the work environment, how does it feel to be part of your team,
Mhm.
right? And again, even if you have nobody other than yourself, that shows up in your branding. That shows up in, your messaging. It shows up in your sales conversations. Like, there's a thread all the way through, and hiring and recruiting is just another form of marketing, right? The same thing that you're doing in your
Yeah.
business is the same concept, right? The thing that you're selling is your company and your job,
Right.
right? The person that's buying is that candidate.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same concept. So you want to be really clear on, what am I bringing people into, and creating an environment and a space where people can actually thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This
You're
was
welcome.
so helpful, and also just
Good.
fun to anytime I get to talk to you, I'm happy. So
Of course. Same.
thanks, Cindy. Thank you
You're
so much.
very
And thank you
welcome.
to everyone for tuning in. Take some time and just like, which of these two assignments are you going to accept this week and apply in your own business? Whether you feel like you're overdue for making a hire or you feel like that's far down the road, this work is essential. Great. Cindy Harvey, thank you so much.
Thank you.